Welcome back to Podcast, Conversations on Philippine History, Politics, and Society. I am Vecal Porha.
I'm Jose to Ebro.
And I am Di Candelaria.
So we are continuing our season, Bagay-Bagay, Philippine Life Through Objects, where we explore fascinating items that have shaped Filipino history and culture. Last episode, we talked about banana ketchup, that uniquely sweet Filipino innovation born during wartime.
And today, we're moving from food to infrastructure naman. Specifically, one of the most iconic structures in the Philippines that literally bridges two islands, but also connects different aspects of our complex national history.
Tama. We're talking about San Juanico Bridge, the longest bridge spanning a body of seawater in Philippines until recently. Connecting Leyte and Samar, ito yung bridge na palagi nasa postcards at tourist photos noon. Yun yung may magandang curve, kung alala nyo.
Yes. Oo. Maganda talaga siya, actually. It's actually a fascinating, impressive feat of engineering, no? But it also has layers of history, politics, and symbolism attached to it, surprisingly. At I think pinaka-unang dapat banggitin, alam nyo ba na ito raw ay gift of love ni Ferdinand Marcos Sr., no? Para sa kanyang asawang si Imelda.
Galing naman. Gift of love, pero using public funds. Interesting concept. But beyond that romantic narrative, it's a structure that has witnessed so much. So from martial law to natural disasters, from being a symbol of progress to becoming a subject of controversy.
Ito yung mga topics na mapapaisip ka rin na kapag nagtatanong ka, ano yung mga bagay na pwede mong matutunan dito? Kasi mula sa iba't ibang kwento at opinion, makakabuo ka ng iba't ibang ideas and even insights. And this bridge isn't just concrete and steel. It's a physical manifestation of our nation's complicated relationship with power, development, and also memory.
Kaya naman, let's dive deep into the story behind this iconic structure that has connected islands and generations. So, the San Juanico Bridge spans the San Juanico Strait, connecting Tacloban City, na ipo-point out ko lang, no? Ito ay hometown ni Imelda Marcos, sa Leyte. At nakakonekta ito sa Santa Rita, sa Samar. It's a marvel of engineering, of course, I mean, in the 1960s, to build something like this, stretching 2.16 kilometers or about 1.34 miles para sa mga Filipino-Americans listening to us, yes.
Yes, so it was part of the Pan-Philippine Highway, also called the Maharlika Highway, which was a major infrastructure project linking the islands of Luzon, Samar, Leyte, and Mindanao. But unlike many bridges that were built primarily for clear economic reasons, this one has a more complex origin story.
Tama yan. Kasi kung papakinggan mo yung official narrative noong panahon ng Marcos regime, itinayo raw ito bilang isang mahalagang infrastructure project para sa national development. Pero marami nagsasabi na controversial ang tunay na dahilan ng pagpapatayo dito.
Dito nga papasok yung concept ng edifice complex na inexplain, of course, ng isang architectural historian na advisor ni bro sa PhD, si Gerard Lico.
Shout out.
Hi, sir.
Ito yung shout out no, sa advisor ni bro. Ito yung obsession with constructing grand monumental structures as symbols of national greatness, progress, and also as demonstrations of the administration's power.
And of course, let's not forget the personal story attached to it. Kasi nga, di ba, tulad ng sinabi kanina, this bridge was widely promoted as a gift or as a declaration of love from President Marcos to his wife, the First Lady, Imelda Marcos, who was from Tacloban, Leyte. So parang, okay, romantic, but so wrong on so many levels.
Romantic nga, no? Pero some people would say na, baka naman nagjo-joke lang si McCoy when he says that. Pero hindi eh. The inauguration ng San Juanico Bridge coincided with Imelda's birthday.
Yes, so July 2, 1973. Diba? So kung sinasabi nila na nagjo-joke lang si McCoy, talaga ba? Ba't i-inaugurate yun sa birthday ng asawa mo? No? So literal, no? Nakakaloko ito. And perhaps a lot of Filipinos thought, ang sweet naman niya. Parang ang tag doon, parang romantic goals or something. Yeah, but we should remember, no? This is a heavy-handed metaphor, but it's so wrong kasi it's public funds na ginagamit dito.
Pero sana lahat, no, nakaka-receive ng regalo na tulay. Solid lang yun. Ang ganda lang ng idea. Sana lahat. Oo, so literal, so talagang binigay na regalo ay isang tulay. At syempre, sino bang magrereklamo sa first lady kung gagastos ng malaking public funds para sa kanya? Di ba?
Yeah, I mean, especially knowing what we know about these couples' penchant, kumbaga, for treating the Philippines like their personal property. Anyway, going back to the discussion at hand, the construction began in 1969, which was also significant because it was an election year. So the bridge was funded by a 22 million US dollar loan from Japan through its official development assistance program. So the Construction and Development Corporation of the Philippines, or CDCP, founded by Rodolfo Cuenca, a known associate or crony of Marcos, was awarded with a contract.
Actually, ang daming kailangang i-unpack, no, sa series of facts na binigay sa atin ni Vic. Isa-isahin natin yan. Diyan muna sa unang nabanggit, no, Japan. After World War II, kinailangan ng Japan na magbayad ng war reparations sa Pilipinas bilang bahagi ng kanilang pananagutan sa pinsala at napakalaking pinsalang idinulot nila noong panahon ng digmaan. The 1956 reparations agreement required Japan to pay $550 million in goods and services over 20 years. Pero eventually, these reparations evolved into a more complex economic relationship with Japan offering ODA, or Official Development Assistance, loans, okay, in the form of loans, supposedly for infrastructure projects like this bridge.
Yun nga eh. Ang problema lang, according to the investigation by the PCGG o Presidential Commission on Good Government, after Marcos was ousted, malaking bahagi ng mga ODA loans na ito ay hindi napunta sa kanilang intended purpose. Former Bureau of Public Highways Commissioner Baltazar Aquino testified that Marcos Sr. allegedly received kickbacks from Japanese contractors involved in these projects, including the San Juanico Bridge. Iba.
Kaya nga tinawag pa tong Marukoso Giwaku o Marcos scandal sa Japan. So it became so notorious that it prompted Japan to reform its entire ODA, or Official Development Assistance Policy, noong 1992 to prevent similar corruption issues in the future. Kasi ilang percent nga nung total reparations yung nanako ni Marcos. Di ba na-research mo yan, Lee?
Oo, actually, ayon sa PCGG, mga $47.7 million or roughly 16% nung $300 million na package from Japan within the period, no? Napunta ito sa Marcos-controlled accounts. So, Japan, sagot sa pagyaman ni Marcos.
Tama. So, grabe yan. No? Kasi mabalik lang ako dun sa point na nabanggit ni Vec kanina. Election year, no? Yung panahon na yan or yung time ng construction. Si Ferdinand was going for re-election and for another 4-year term. Una siyang nahalal noong 1965. So, 1969, election ulit yan. Ganyan din kasi parang US system, so 4 years. Kailangan niya magpabango. And the 1969 election would eventually be known as the dirtiest election in Philippine history, with massive vote buying, intimidation, and use of government resource for campaigning.
Yeah. Parang ngayon lang din, no? I mean, sa Pilipinas, bago ang eleksyon, yung incumbent biglang sisirain yung daan, tapos gagawin ulit, papalitan ulit, mag-aasfalto ulit, tapos may nakalagay ng project of the mayor, yun pala, tatakbo kasi ulit. So, galawang trapo.
Totoo, ano. At yung isa pang kailangan talagang pag-usapan dito ay yung contractor ng San Juanico Bridge na CDCP, na tulad ng sinabi kanina ay pagmamayari ni Rodolfo Cuenca na isang Marcos crony. So, itong CDCP would later become the PNCC, or Philippine National Construction Corporation. So, Cuenca, along with other cronies like Eduardo Danding Coangco, Roberto Benedicto, and Jose Campos, received preferential treatment in government contracts and loans during the Marcos era, creating what economists called crony capitalism.
So yung cronyism, yung pagnanakaw at corruption ni Marcos, hindi naman kailangan pa ng martial law para mangyari yan. Kasi clearly, bago pang martial law, may nangyayari ng nakawan no?
Yes, and kung interesado yung ating mga listeners, balikan nyo yung season namin last year, yung Shapers and Shakers, for more information on this cronyism. So, balik tayo dun sa bridge ulit. So, isang malaking kritisismo sa San Juanico Bridge nung tatayo ito ay kung kailangan ba talaga. I think it's worth noting that at the time, the regions of Leyte and Samar were relatively underdeveloped with limited inter-island traffic. So many questioned if such a massive infrastructure project was economically justifiable at that point, or if it was just another example of what architectural historian Gerard Lico calls the edifice complex. Grand structures that serve more as monuments to power than as practical solutions to people's needs.
Tama. Maraming critics din ang nagsasabi na ito daw ay, or yung mga projects na ito ay white elephant. O yung mga projects na mahal pero hindi practical. At masasabing ginamit lang for propaganda. Case in point, yung Film Center and even the Cultural Center of the Philippines. Siyempre, sa perspective naman ng mga supporter, they saw it as forward-thinking infrastructure that would eventually stimulate economic growth.
Yeah, parang yung Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, 'di ba? Na yun talaga white elephant kasi never really operational and it costed us so much money, 'di ba? People cannot argue na kita nyo naman yung San Juanico Bridge, look at how it bolstered the economy. But point is, at the time when it was built, do we figure into na in 20 years or in 30 years, hindi naman tayo ganun mag-isip eh. We respond to the needs now. No? Of course, happy rin na we're forward thinking, but then again, we respond to what is needed now. No? Ito yung kailangan ng mga tao. Anyway, for sure, itong construction na ito ng San Juanico Bridge gave people jobs. No? Balita ay daan-daang workers daw ang employed daily during its construction, which took almost 4 years to complete. And the bridge features 43 steel spans on concrete piers with the longest span measuring 192 meters. So it's not a straight shot, but it has this gentle, aesthetically pleasing curve that actually became iconic.
Tama, Pero yung curve na yon, it wasn't just for aesthetics. It was an intentional design choice to help the structure better withstand the strong winds and powerful water currents of the San Juanico Strait. So talagang the bridge needed to be resilient.
So physically, ito ay isang steel girder viaduct with reinforced concrete piers. At yun nga, yung kanyang main span uses an arch-shaped truss design. Yung highest point nitong arch na ito, rises to 41 meters above sea level to allow for passage of ships underneath. No? And we should mention na if you look at it from above, some say na yung curve daw niya is letter S, parang on the Samar side. Pero from the latest side, it's letter L. No? I think it's probably coincidental. No? But it's become part of its local lore.
Speaking of lore, di ba sabi nila pag gumagawa daw ng bridge, dapat daw lagyan ng dugo para matibay. Ito ba yun?
Oo, panakot yan sa mga bata. Kikidnap daw ng bata. Or siguro, may maglalagay ng dugo ng manok doon or something.
Yeah, creepy talaga. Pero itong mga urban legends na to, sobrang interesting kasi they often emerge around massive construction projects like this, especially during times of social stress or political repression.
So, okay, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, let's discuss how the San Juanico Bridge has witnessed key moments in Philippine history.
Welcome back to podcast. So we're discussing the San Juanico Bridge and how it has witnessed significant events in Philippine history.
Yes. So the bridge was inaugurated 1973. So talagang martial law, full-scale implementation ng period na yan. Kasi it was just declared in 1972. This context is crucial because the bridge became emblematic of the regime's infrastructure-driven development narrative, which was often termed as achievements of this bagong lipunan or new society.
Pero ito yung one of the darkest associations with the bridge. This is where it comes in during martial law. Kasi yung term na San Juanico Bridge became military torture slang for a specific method of torture, where a victim was suspended between two beds and bitten, with their body forming an arch like the bridge.
Ang lala, no? Kasi akalain mo yun, something like a bridge na sobrang neutral, neutral infrastructure yan eh. At na-associate pa siya sa repression sa panahon ng martial law. Totoo rin talaga no, na mahirap i-separate ang structures from the political context in which they were built.
So after the People Power Revolution in 1986 that ousted Marcos, investigations by the newly formed Presidential Commission on Good Government, or PCGG nga, nabanggit kanina, brought to light allegations of massive corruption surrounding the bridge's financing. No? Specifically, Commissioner Baltazar Aquino testified that the President Marcos received kickbacks nga daw from Japanese contractors involved in ODA-funded projects like the San Juanico Bridge.
At yun nga, dito nga lumabas yung scandal sa Japan, yung Marcos Giwaku.
So ang bridge na ito ay ipinagmamalaki bilang simbolo ng pag-unlad, ay naging bahagi rin ng kontrobersya tungkol sa korupsyon. It really shows how infrastructure projects can be vessels for both national pride and national shame. Minsan nga sabay pa.
But despite its controversial beginnings, itong bridge na ito as years passed, it, of course, its intended function as a vital transport link became more fully realized. No? Andiyan na eh. Ano yan? Gibain ba natin yan? Hindi naman. No way but up. So daanan na lang natin. Economic activity in Leyte and Samar gradually increased, and the bridge evolved into a crucial artery for trade, for tourism, and inter-island connectivity.
Also, its role was particularly highlighted during natural disasters. So halimbawa, when Super Typhoon Haiyan or Bagyong Yolanda hit in 2013, the bridge sustained only slight damage and was quickly repaired. And then it served as an indispensable lifeline for transporting emergency aid, personnel, supplies, lalo na dun sa mga talagang devastated areas.
Totoo yan. Kung wala yung bridge, or San Juanico Bridge during Yolanda, mas mahihirapan pa yung mga relief operations. So in a way, despite its controversial origins, it proved its worth during one of the country's worst natural disasters. Although, we must note that the same is true with public infrastructure na naipatayo nang hindi nagnanakaw sa kaban ng bayan.
Exactly. No? Hindi naman kailangan magnakaw para gumawa ng public infrastructure that would benefit the people. Anyway, in more recent times, specifically around 2022-2023, the bridge underwent another transformation with the implementation of the San Juanico Bridge aesthetic lighting project. So this 80 million initiative, inaugurated under the administration of the Sun, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., features dynamic, customizable LED light shows designated to illuminate the bridge at night.
Wow, so the lighting project is actually really fascinating kasi it represents another layer in how each administration engages with the legacy of this bridge. And in fact, supporters framed it as a legacy within a legacy. I mean, in linking the current Marcos administration to the infrastructure achievements of Marcos Sr.
Pero of course, critics would view it as lavish spending, particularly when contrasted with persistent poverty in Eastern Visayas and, as we're about to discuss, the bridge's emerging structural needs.
Yeah, actually, ito yung pinaka-recent chapter nitong history nga or kasaysayan nitong bridge na ito, no? As of May 2025, as we're recording this, na-report lang na ang daming kailangang ayusin sa bridge, no? Structural assessments have revealed significant vulnerabilities in the aging bridge. 52 years old na rin naman kasi, no? Leading to very strict load restrictions and plans for a comprehensive rehabilitation.
Yes, specifically, there's now a 3 metric ton axle load limit. And heavy vehicles like commercial cargo trucks, passenger buses were temporarily prohibited from using the bridge. So this is disrupting regional supply chains and actually causes considerable economic impact.
Interesting, no? Kasi parang metaphor siya for aging infrastructure across the country. 52 years ng San Juanico Bridge at tulad ng maraming infrastructure projects built during that era, it now requires significant investment to keep it functioning safely.
And the rehabilitation is estimated to cost around 800 to 900 million pesos, probably around 2 years to complete. Meanwhile, meron ding mga plano for a second San Juanico Bridge to provide an alternate route.
na gagawin din under the second Marcos administration. Talagang walang subtlety dun sa no.
Yeah.
Pagkaya dun sa tatay. Kasi I mean, which is to be expected kasi they never conceded that, Marcos messed the country up. Like sa narrative nila he did great and we should, emulate that. Anyway, the historical journey of this bridge reflects a broader narrative we see in many large-scale infrastructure projects. So from a politically charged inception and questions of initial viability to eventual economic integration and symbolic importance, and finally to the challenges of aging and need for substantial reinvestment.
Let's talk about what the San Juanico Bridge symbolizes in Filipino consciousness because its meaning goes far beyond its function as a physical connector.
For sure. Perhaps its most overt symbolism is that of unity. Kasi nga, it physically and metaphorically bridges the islands of Samar and Leyte, historically distinct provinces, and fostering a sense of shared regional identity and supposedly enabling closer economic and cultural exchange.
Sa Eastern Visayas, particularly sa mga waray noon ng Leyte at Samar, ang tulay na ito ay simbolo ng kanilang pagkakaisa at koneksyon. It has fostered closer social ties and integrated the economies of the two provinces more closely than ever before.
And of course, it's also widely seen as a symbol of national pride and Filipino engineering capability. Diba, nung parang, I think grade school textbooks would say na parang, what are the things that we should be proud of? Oh, we have the San Juanico Bridge and so on.
Oo nga.
I mean, despite the controversies we've discussed, many Filipinos somehow view the bridge as a testament to what the nation can achieve in terms of infrastructure development.
But it's impossible to ignore that, for many, the bridge remains a potent symbol of the Marcos era and its legacy. So for some, it represents the developmentalist, aspect of that period, yung massive infrastructure projects na ginawa. Pero for others, it's a reminder of excess, political showmanship, and of course, corruption.
At dahil nga mostly associated ito sa Marcos era, naging contentious ito bilang isang site of memory sa Pilipinas, showing or embodying multiple, often conflicting layers of national and regional narratives. Naalala ko yung paper ko dun sa libro nila Lee about memoryscapes. And I think San Juanico Bridge directly fits in such type of description.
Kasi the bridge itself evokes a range of sensory experiences and emotional responses. Ma-share ko lang, first time kong madaanan ito last year when I visited. And it's a different experience actually. It reminds me of yung suspension bridge dito sa Japan sa may sa may Shimonoseki area. And it's a really beautiful view, maganda yung sunset and so on. Crossing it offers like breathtaking panoramic views of the San Juanico Strait, its swirling whirlpools, yung mga small islets and the surrounding very beautiful landscapes of Leyte and Samar. Ang ganda talaga niya. I mean, it's a nice experience, if I may say so.
Yes, and actually many people who have crossed the bridge, sabi nila talagang distinct yung sensation ng sea breeze, especially when walking or riding in an open vehicle. At yung iba naman, yung mga anecdotes, sabi nila, talagang nafe-feel nila na may vibration yung sa tulay kapag may mga dumadaan na malalaking truck, And I think, that's a reminder of its dynamic structure. Which spans this waterway between Samar and Leyte.
Nung nandoon ako actually at nagpass kami nung kasama ko yung driver, sabi niya sa akin, sir, taga Leyte siya. Sabi niya, sir, tignan mo, may nagpapapicture. Actually kasi bawal lumakad. Usually it's just the people checking the bridge at officials. Pero parang may nagpe-prenup shoot. Sabi niya, alam niyo sir, yung mga nakakagawa niyang mga politiko lang. So, I think another layer of na parang maganda siya pero it's really inaccessible naman for everyone. But the bridge itself is actually captured also in popular culture. So, the Filipino actor and stunt performer Dante Varona famously jumped from the San Juanico Bridge without a harness noong 1981 in the action film Hari ng Stunt. Ito yung mga panahon na usong-uso ang mga action films, no?
Tas may mga award-winning short fictions din tulad ng The Bridge by Yvette Tan na inspired sa urban legends surrounding the bridge's construction. Kaya sa literature at film, present din ang San Juanico Bridge.
So despite its iconic status, the San Juanico Bridge faces significant challenges today that reflect broader issues about how we manage our historical infrastructure.
Yeah, so pinag-usapan natin yung kumbaga controversial na simulain. At syempre yung historical legacy na rin nitong tulay na to. But I think what's most pressing now are the very real structural vulnerabilities revealed in the recent assessments. So hindi lang siya tungkol sa kasaysayan, It's about, the literal safety nitong tulay at yung economic impact niya.
Exactly. So the current DPWH restrictions like 3 metric ton axle load limit, center line only travel, and the ban on heavy vehicles are having immediate consequences for Eastern Visayas' economy.
In fact, yung Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they have raised this very serious concern about supply chain disruptions. When heavy cargo needs to be rerouted via roll-on, roll-off vessels, actually, it creates delays and it increases the costs for basic commodities. And again, hindi naman mayaman na area itong sinaservice nitong bridge na ito.
Tama, And I think these were priorities come into question kasi tulad ng sabi kanina, they spent 80 million pesos for aesthetic lighting. Pero yung tulay, kailangan niya ng around 800-900 million pesos to be rehabilitated. And for this year, for 2025, only 150 million pesos was actually allocated para lang dun sa retrofitting, critical retrofitting ng tulay.
Ang ganda ng point na kasi. It's a perfect example of national tendency to prioritize spectacle over structural soundness. So the lighting project makes great for photos and tourism promotion. Pero ang totoo, the bridge needs fundamental repairs to continue serving its basic function.
But I think what's more concerning is that the traffic volume actually continues to grow. By 2040, the projections show that nearly 16,000 vehicles daily will need to cross, and that's far beyond the bridge's 10,000 vehicle design capacity.
Yeah, this is why JICA is already conducting preliminary studies for a second San Juanico Bridge connecting Babatngon, Leyte to Santa Rita, Samar. So another major infrastructure project with Japan's involvement. So it feels like, history rhyming.
Involved na naman ang Japan, Tapos Marcos sa ulit ang presidente. Parang nangyari na to.
So I think that's what makes San Juanico Bridge like a compelling subject. It shows how physical structures become repositories of complicated national memory.
And it forces us to ask difficult questions, Like, how do we preserve historical infrastructure while acknowledging its problematic origins? How do we celebrate engineering achievements while being honest about the corruption that often accompanied them?
Tama. These aren't just questions about the bridge. I think these are questions about, how we understand ourselves as a nation and how we move forward without necessarily forgetting the lessons of our past.
All right, so that's all for this episode on the San Juanico Bridge. Like many aspects of our history, hindi lang naman din siya simpleng good or bad, But it's actually a physical reminder of our nation's complicated journey.
In our next episode, we'll be exploring another significant object in Philippine life and history. And one clue, it's something many Filipinos use every day.
Uy, parang alam ko yan, Don't forget to follow us on our social media accounts and visit our website, podcast.org, for more resources.
So maraming salamat sa pakikinig. Until next time, this has been Podcast, Conversations on Philippine History, Politics, and Society. As always, have a good day.